So when you think about using social media, you also need to think about the challenges associated with it. We've been talking back and forth about multiple uses for social media, but one of the things to remember is as you're setting up your plan, who's your target audience? Who are you trying to reach? And make sure you're using the right tool or the right format to reach that audience. You might need to send some things via email, and we already talked about that was kind of the antiquated social media, to some folks, but you want to put it on your Facebook page if you want to reach this particular group of students. So be really intentional and have that conversation early in the development of your plan about who your audiences are. And you'll have more than one. Admission, it's not just about potential students. You're also advertising to family. You're also advertising information about the university out to the rest of the campus because you want to make sure that they're participating in some of the events that you have. So really intentionally think about who are those members of your audiences, and I'll guarantee you got plural, that you want to make sure you're communicating with. Negative comments, interactions, Stacey already hit up on how are you going to handle that, and what can that do to your social media brand that you're trying to develop, because the ultimate outcome of a social media plan, it defines your social media brand. So how do you want to be perceived? Perceptions of social media. With your audiences and even with the folks in your areas, your offices, or the people who are helping you develop this, there are some perceptions out there about social media that are negative. We talked about some of them in here. It's time consuming, it's confusing, there's too many, how do they integrate together? What's the privacy issue associated with this particular type of social media? And they go on and on and on. You need to be honest about what those are and how are you going to overcome them. University policies versus student engagement, we talked a little bit about that. What is your social media policy? What is the university, even if it's not an official policy, but what is your upper level administration comfortable with you doing? Stacey's done a lot of work on her campus about using social media and has been the leader, I think, on IU South Bend's campus and setting a lot of this stuff up. So they're probably really comfortable with her in the department making the decision that you need to go ahead and let some of those negative comments lay out there. There are other campuses where that will never fly. And there are also some environments where there are particular issues that you do not want to have up on that website, depending on what your function is. So you have to be honest about those too. Determining the focus of your social media use. How really are you going to use this thing? You've got your audiences down, but what are you using the social media for? Go back to those 4 things we talked about earlier about connecting, informing, engaging, and learning. And what is your intended outcome? How are you going to manage all the social media venues that you have? Time commitments are issues. There's a learning curve with some of these too. Some people pick up on these different platforms very quickly. Other people, it takes a long time. So how are you going to do the training? How are you going to get people up to speed so that they can use these most effectively? Are there other challenges that people can think of when it comes to using social media, particularly as it relates to a plan?
I'll say one thing. One of the things, though, with some of the social media, depending on what it is, it does require sometimes the students to have to log in. And it feels kind of, I think they have a legitimate reason if they say, I really don't want a Flickr account, I don't want, not a Flickr account, but I don't want to have to log into, I don't want a Google email to do Google Docs. And so that can get a little tricky too.
Yeah, and you may have some resistance there, that's true.
Just to let you know, with Google Docs, you don't have to have Google, you have to do it. You
Right,
can
yeah.
use your USI account. I know, I'm just saying for the rest of it.
But I think the point is also made that there are some that do require you to do that.
Yeah.
Foursquare, you're going to have to log on to Foursquare. You're going to have a Foursquare account. Now, Facebook has decided they want to, instead of buying Foursquare, which was odd, that they just created their own with Facebook as Places. Is that what they call it?
Yeah.
So you can check in on Facebook too. So if you wanted potentially the functionality of Foursquare, maybe without all the other comments, and you want to link it to a Facebook departmental page, you might be able to use that instead. So there are also options, and this stuff is evolving at light speed. I mean, we put 2 of them up here that nobody had ever heard of before, and both of them have been out for at least a year. So, Tumblr and Tungle, I mean, it constantly evolves. There are more and more things out there that we didn't even include on this.
Well, we did this presentation for the first time in November, and the number of things we had to remove because they've stopped using them, and then add because they've really become popular in the past 5 months. It's just phenomenal.
So that may be another challenge that we need to, here we're going to change presentation again, add is that it's constantly evolving. It's constantly moving. And so how do you keep up with that? If email is something, it's now pretty well fundamentally ingrained in what we do. But what's going to happen 10 years from now? Here's some resources that Stacy can just briefly go over.
Yep, we have resources that we will share with you. We sent them to David to make copies of, so you will all get a copy, but we also have it as a Google Doc because in an effort to be sustainable and practice what we preach.
Yeah.
We have it available in that format. The first one is a blog post by our colleague Ed Cabellin on creating a social media plan and student affairs. He kind of goes through the ins and outs of how do you decide what you're using and how do you decide who's managing it. We also have the DePaul University social media guidelines for their university, the Indiana University South Bend social media standards, and those are really fun to compare to each other because, like I said, very liberal at IU South Bend. Do whatever you want, just don't screw up. And DePaul has some very, very strict standards. And then we have an article about a university that planned a social media blackout week and how that blew up in their faces, and a nonprofit social media decision guide, which is being passed on right now.
So with that, and we'll also make this available, we can send David the link if people would like to refer back to this at any point. We can also, I'll demystify what some of our notes mean, and we can send this to you because it does go through each of the different platforms individually, and much of what we said is included on the outline so that you can use that to go back to as a resource. David also videoed it, which is a little creepy for me, but that's okay. And I believe he's going to post it on YouTube.
That's the word on the street.
Creepy. So if there are others that you want to see this, that's fine. And having access to the Prezi and maybe the notes might help facilitate what they can actually see because we don't know how good the video is here. But here's our contact information. Our Twitter accounts, our Twitter handles, that's what we call them, are up here, as is our email address. And then David, I think, has all of our contact information if you want to phone, email, call, Twitter, Facebook, or carrier pigeon. It's fine.
I just have a question about how do you all personally manage all these different accounts through Workday too? I mean, I know if we have people set up to do specific checking and so on, but it seems like if I hear about Facebook and we should be checking with our students, it's so easy to get caught up and go in, it's just going to take away part of your day. So how do you manage all that with your work?
It can take away huge chunks of your day. One of the things that I've done is actually add 2 calendar appointments every day that are 15 minutes long that just say check social media sites. So I will go check our Twitter account, make sure that it's current, that we've posted something or replied to students, and I check our Facebook. And the Facebook one is at 4:45 every day, so that the last thing I do before I leave for the night is post something about that night's events or whatever, and then respond. And then Twitter I check twice a day.
Right. Our department's a little bit different. We have vastly different sizes of departments, so I'll just talk about this from the housing perspective. We actually have an assistant director of marketing who we've had to train and bring along about the importance of social media, and now she's on board. I mean, she loves it. So what she did is we have several units that report up through university housing. There's dining, residence life, facilities, education and outreach, which really does a lot of our student programming within housing and a couple others. And they will, they each have a representative, and so at various points they will go on and they're required to check these. And they coordinate a calendar together so that if it's time for contract renewal, we know we're not going to send something out right on top of it that dwarfs its importance. They also, though, will indicate who is the one that updated it. So if it's Twitter, it's going out on the same account, which is fine. But if it's Facebook, we want to know that the person from education and outreach is the one that put that particular post up. So we just have them squiggle it and they put their name. So Gina Stack puts it up there for SIU housing, we know she's the one that put it out there for SIU housing. And that allows us to track it back if we have a question about a poster, if we need to remove one. It is open, they are monitoring it, but it spreads the workload out a little bit for them because we have so many things that are going on all the time. I have a personal one for Twitter. I also have a professional Twitter account, SIUC Housing Director, with all the vowels removed, so it's squished together. And that one, the second one, I don't update as much as I do the personal one. But I will also mind things like if I see housing or SIU housing or, I hate this, SIUC dorms, something that's going on in there. If a student pops in there, and I will respond to them from my housing director account if it was negative or positive. If there are recognition pieces for our staff that they're posting out there, they're excited that they did something, I'll push it out there from the director or retweet it. So if Stacy says she did something, I can then retweet her tweet so that people can see that I thought it was cool or I wanted to emphasize it and all my followers can see it. We found that it's a really powerful tool for recognition of our staff. And it's also helping us with recruitment of new staff because they're seeing the kind of environment and community that we're creating in our program.
Do y'all use anything in TweetDeck?
Oh yeah, I use Tweet because I'm on monitor 4 different accounts and you've got just as many, if not more. I don't even wanna know.
I don't want to talk about it. It's awkward. I do use TweetDeck. I don't integrate our Facebook with TweetDeck though.
Mhm.
I just use TweetDeck for Twitter and then actually go to facebook.com.
So TweetDeck, if you wanted to know, TweetDeck is something that you can put on your computer, PC, that allows you to have your Twitter account in there and your Facebook account, and you can tweet, you can make a posting to both of them at the same time.
Mhm.
See, I like that. Sorry.
Well, and you can also, TweetDeck will let
Or
you
do
do,
one or the other.
you can also integrate your LinkedIn account with TweetDeck, you can integrate your Foursquare account, TweetDeck. DECK, like the thing you build on the back of the house. Yes, TweetDeck. And you can monitor multiple searches, so if you're searching for those different hashtags or trending topics, you can keep them up constantly. You can, switch back and forth between many accounts. You can post simultaneously to several different Twitter or those different format accounts, so it does help with managing it a little bit more.
Okay, well, that wraps up the first part. For those of you who are sticking around for the hands-on training, we'll move downstairs and we're going to go more in depth with Facebook pages.
Thanks a lot of power.
Dude, I've just been posting events for tutoring. So what I usually do is go out
No reason to start next.
I don't know about that. I'll see you down here. You guys know where to go?
I think we're good.
We're breaking this, so shoot me a text message if you need this nozzle.